The execution chamber was cold and sterile, just like everything else the Zenthai built. Sergeant First Class Maria Santos stood with her hands tied behind her back, looking straight ahead at the camera that would broadcast her death across 17 star systems. She did not shake. She did not cry. She stood like the Green Beret she was. Commander Velthok adjusted his ceremonial armor and smiled with satisfaction. The human female had caused him more trouble than any single creature should have been able to cause. For 8 months, her resistance cell had blown up supply convoys, rescued prisoners, and made his forces look like fools. Now she would die, and every human in Zenthai space would see what happened to those who defied the Empire. The broadcast began. Velthok stepped forward to address the camera, his forearms spread wide in a gesture of dominance. His translator device converted his words into dozens of languages as he spoke. "Citizens of the Zenthai Empire," he began, his voice echoing through the chamber. "Today you witness the price of rebellion. This human terrorist has killed our soldiers and disrupted our peace. She will serve as an example to all who would challenge our authority." Maria Santos said nothing. She had been captured 3 days ago during a failed mission to rescue human children from a work camp. Her team had gotten the children out, but she had stayed behind to buy them time. It was worth it. It was always worth it. Velthok continued his speech, describing the crimes the human had committed. He spoke of destroyed facilities, dead soldiers, and disrupted operations. What he did not mention was how a single team of 5 humans had outsmarted his army of 10,000. For almost a year, the Zenthai had conquered dozens of worlds with their superior technology and overwhelming numbers. They had crushed the bird-like Carracks in 6 months. The aquatic depths had surrendered after seeing what happened to the Carracks. The crystalline shards had not even tried to fight. But humans were different. Humans fought dirty. Humans never gave up. Humans made everything complicated. "Any last words, terrorist?" Velthok asked, stepping closer to Santos. Maria Santos lifted her head and looked directly into the camera. Her voice was calm and clear when she spoke. "Tell my brothers and sisters I kept the faith. You have no idea what you just did." Velthok laughed, a harsh sound that his people made when they found something amusing. Empty threats from a dying animal. "Your people will learn from your example." The noose was placed around her neck. Santos closed her eyes for a moment, thinking of her team, her family, and her mission. She had done everything she could. Now it was up to others to finish what they had started. The trapdoor opened. Maria Santos died as she had lived, without fear. Velthok turned back to the camera. "Let this be a lesson to all who would defy the Zenthai Empire. Resistance is futile. Submission is the only path to survival." The broadcast ended. Velthok was pleased with himself. The execution had been transmitted to every planet under Zenthai control. Billions had watched the human terrorist die. The message was clear. The Empire was strong. The Empire was eternal. What Velthok did not know was that the broadcast had reached places he never intended it to reach. Hidden transmitters, built and maintained by human resistance cells, had boosted the signal far beyond Zenthai space. The execution of Sergeant First Class Maria Santos was being watched by people the aliens did not even know existed. On Earth, in a secure room deep beneath the Pentagon, General Patricia Hayes watched the broadcast with stone-cold eyes. She had trained Maria Santos herself years ago at Fort Bragg. She had recommended Santos for the special assignment that had placed her on New Brasilia under deep cover. She had sent that young woman to her death, and now she had to watch her die. The room was silent except for the hum of electronics. 12 other officers sat around the table, all of them watching the screen with the same expression. They had all known Santos. They had all trained with her, fought with her, or served under her command at some point in their careers. When the broadcast ended, General Hayes stood up. She walked to a secure terminal and entered her authorization codes. Red lights began flashing throughout the room as classified systems came online. "Gentlemen," she said, her voice as cold as space itself, "we are going to war." Colonel James Morrison, Santos's former commanding officer, leaned forward. "Ma'am, with respect, we've been at war for 3 years. Ever since they invaded New Brasilia." Hayes shook her head. "No, Colonel. We've been playing defense. We've been trying to minimize casualties and find diplomatic solutions. That ends now." She turned to face the table. "They just executed one of our own on live broadcast across half the galaxy. They want to send a message. Fine, we'll send one back. She pressed a button on her terminal. Across the room, a holographic display showed a map of Zenthai space. Red dots appeared on 17 different worlds, each one marking a location where humans lived under alien occupation. Operation Payback is now active, Hayes announced. Every deep cover team, every sleeper cell, every asset we have been building for the past 3 years is now authorized to engage. Rules of engagement are simple. No Zenthai installation is off limits. No Zenthai commander is safe. No Zenthai planet is secure. Major Sarah Kim, who had been silent until now, spoke up. General, our people have been in position for years. They're ready. But once we start this, there's no going back. The Zenthai will know we've been planning this all along. Hayes nodded. Good. I want them to know. I want them to understand that when you kill one of ours, you don't just anger us. You activate us. She looked around the room at each officer in turn. Maria Santos died to give us this moment. She died to justify what we're about to do. Don't waste her sacrifice. The officers began entering commands into their terminals. Across the galaxy, coded messages started transmitting to human settlements on Zenthai worlds. Messages that looked like normal communications between families and friends. Messages that actually contained activation codes for operations that had been planned down to the smallest detail. On New Brasilia, a farmer named Jake Morrison received a message that his cousin's wedding had been moved to next Tuesday. He smiled grimly and walked to his barn, where he moved several hay bales to reveal a hidden cache of weapons and explosives. On Kepler Prime, a shopkeeper named Chen Lu got word that his grandmother's favorite recipe had been chosen for the family cookbook. He closed his store early and walked to his basement, where sophisticated hacking equipment waited under a false floor. On 17 different worlds, people who had been living normal lives for years suddenly became something else. They had been farmers, mechanics, teachers, and shopkeepers. Now they were what they had always been underneath. They were soldiers. They were operators. They were the kind of people who did not forgive and did not forget. Commander Velthok had no idea what he had started. He thought he had ended a problem by killing one human terrorist. Instead, he had just given the greatest military force in the galaxy permission to stop holding back. The execution had lasted 9 minutes from start to finish. In 9 more minutes, every Zenthai installation in 3 star systems would learn what it meant to face the full wrath of Earth's Special Operations Community. The war was about to begin in earnest, and the Zenthai had no idea what was coming for them. Captain Jake Morrison put down his farming tools and looked at his watch. It had been exactly 9 minutes since the broadcast ended. 9 minutes since he had watched his former student die on live television. 9 minutes since he had received the coded message that changed everything. For 3 years, Jake had been living as a simple farmer on New Brasilia. He grew vegetables, sold them at the local market, and kept his head down whenever Zenthai patrols came through his village. The aliens thought he was just another broken human, defeated and harmless. They were very wrong. Jake Morrison had been a Green Beret for 15 years before the invasion. He had trained Maria Santos. He had recommended her for this mission. And he had been presumed dead in the first week of fighting when his transport ship was shot down. The Zenthai never found his body because there was no body to find. He had survived the crash and gone underground. Now he walked to his barn and moved the hay bales that hid his real work. Underneath was enough military hardware to equip a small army. Rifles, explosives, communication equipment, and detailed maps of every Zenthai facility within 50 miles. He had been gathering intelligence and preparing for this day for 3 long years. His team was already moving. Sarah Chen, who ran the local school, was actually a former Army Ranger with expertise in demolitions. Dr. Michael Torres, the village doctor, had been a Special Forces medic who knew how to heal people and how to hurt them. Lisa Park, who owned the general store, was a former Air Force combat controller who could call down fire from the sky if she had the right equipment. They all received the same message. They all knew what it meant. The waiting was over. Jake opened a secure communication channel and spoke into his headset. All teams, this is Shepard. Operation Payback is active. Repeat, Operation Payback is active. Execute Phase 1 in 60 seconds. Across the planet, similar conversations were happening. 37 different resistance cells, all led by former Special Operations personnel, all armed and trained and ready for this moment. The Zenthai thought they controlled New Brasilia with their 3,000 soldiers and their orbital defense platform. They were about to learn how wrong they were. On Kepler Prime, Chen Lu locked the front door of his electronics shop and flipped the sign to closed. His customers thought he sold simple devices to help with everyday life. What they did not know was that for 2 years, he had been installing hidden programs in every piece of Zenthai equipment he had been asked to repair. Chen had been a cyber warfare specialist before the invasion. The army had taught him how to break into any computer system ever built. The Zenthai had unwittingly given him access to their entire network when they brought him their damaged equipment to fix. He descended into his basement and activated systems that had been hidden beneath false floors and behind fake walls. Multiple screens came to life, showing him access points throughout the Zenthai computer network. He had been patient. He had been careful. He had placed his digital weapons in exactly the right places, waiting for the right moment to use them. That moment was now. Chen began typing commands that would cripple the alien communication network. Navigation systems would fail. Weapons targeting would malfunction. Life support on smaller ships would shut down at exactly the wrong moments. It would take the Zenthai hours to realize they had been hacked, and days to fix the damage. On 17 different worlds, similar scenes were playing out. Former Navy SEALs who had been working as dock workers suddenly had access to orbital defense codes. Ex-Delta Force operators posing as janitors knew exactly where to place explosives for maximum effect. Air Force para-rescue specialists disguised as paramedics had detailed knowledge of every Zenthai medical facility. The aliens had made a critical mistake. They had assumed that defeated humans would stay defeated. They had not considered that some humans might be pretending to be defeated while actually preparing for revenge. Master Chief Rodriguez had been working as a maintenance supervisor at the Zenthai headquarters on Titan 7 for 2 years. The aliens trusted him with access to their most secure facilities because he seemed like a simple, harmless worker who just wanted to do his job and go home to his family. Rodriguez had been a Navy SEAL for 20 years. He had fought in conflicts across human space and earned decorations for actions that were still classified. When the Zenthai invaded Titan 7, he had hidden his military background and applied for a civilian job. They had hired him immediately, grateful to have a human who seemed cooperative. For 2 years he had mopped their floors, fixed their equipment, and learned their security procedures. He knew which doors led where, which systems controlled what, and exactly how many guards were on duty at any given time. Most importantly, he knew how to move through their headquarters without being seen. Rodriguez checked his watch and began walking toward the command center. In his maintenance cart were cleaning supplies, replacement parts, and enough plastic explosives to level half the building. The guards nodded to him as he passed. They saw him every day. He was part of the furniture. He entered the command center through the maintenance entrance and began setting up his equipment. To anyone watching, he was just cleaning the floors. Actually, he was placing small charges at critical structural points and installing devices that would disable their communication arrays at exactly the right moment. Similar operations were beginning across Zenthai space. The aliens had been so confident in their victory that they had never considered the possibility that their human workers might be undercover military personnel. They had hired the enemy to maintain their own bases. On Earth, General Hayes watched the real-time reports coming in from across the galaxy. Every deep cover team was in position. Every target had been identified and marked. Years of preparation were about to pay off in one coordinated strike that would change the balance of power in 3 star systems. All teams report ready, Colonel Morrison announced. Phase 1 is green across all sectors. Hayes nodded and picked up her secure phone. She dialed a number that connected her directly to the President of the United Earth Alliance. The conversation was brief. Mr. President, Operation Payback is ready to execute. We are requesting permission to engage. General Hayes, those bastards just murdered one of our soldiers on live television. Permission granted. Show them what happens when they mess with Earth. Hayes hung up the phone and turned to her staff. All teams, this is command. You are authorized to engage. Execute Operation Payback. Let's bring our people home. Across the galaxy, the message was received. On 17 worlds and dozens of facilities, men and women who had been hiding their true nature for years finally revealed who they really were. The Zenthai thought they had won the war 3 years ago. They were about to discover that the war had never really ended. It had just been waiting for the right moment to begin again. Maria Santos was dead, but her sacrifice had accomplished something the aliens could never have imagined. It had given Earth's military the justification they needed to stop playing defense and start playing offense. The next phase of the war was about to begin, and this time the humans were not going to hold back. The first explosion happened at exactly 2100 hours ship time on the Zenthai command cruiser orbiting New Brasilia. Lieutenant Commander Zexhai was reviewing patrol reports when the lights went out and emergency alarms began screaming throughout the ship. "What happened?" he demanded, activating his personal communicator. "Sir, we've lost primary power to decks 7 through 12, came the panicked reply from engineering. "Multiple system failures across the ship. We're also getting reports of explosions from the surface." Through the viewport, Zexhai could see fires blooming across the planet below. What had been a quiet, controlled world 60 seconds ago was now burning in dozens of places. The human settlements that had been peaceful for 3 years were suddenly alive with violence. On the surface, Jake Morrison's team moved with deadly precision. They had spent years studying Zenthai patrol patterns, guard rotations, and response protocols. When the explosion started, they knew exactly where the enemy would go and how they would react. Sarah Chen detonated the charges she had placed beneath the main communication tower 3 months earlier. The tower collapsed in a shower of sparks and twisted metal, cutting off local Zenthai forces from their orbital support. At the same moment, Dr. Torres used his medical access codes to enter the alien garrison and release a gas that would put every Zenthai soldier to sleep for the next 6 hours. Lisa Park activated the beacon she had hidden in the mountains, sending a signal that would guide human reinforcements to the planet when they arrived. But that was still days away. Right now they were on their own. Teams 2 through 8 report status. Jake spoke into his headset as he moved through the forest toward the main Zenthai base. Team 2, demolition complete. Power station is down. Team 4, we have control of the spaceport. No ships are getting off this rock. Team 7, orbital defense platform is offline. Repeat, orbital defenses are offline. Jake smiled grimly. Phase 1 was proceeding perfectly, but Phase 1 was just the beginning. On Kepler Prime, Chen Lu's cyber attack was wreaking havoc across the Zenthai fleet. Navigation systems failed just as ships were trying to change course. Weapons systems shut down in the middle of combat drills. Life support fluctuated on smaller vessels, forcing crews to focus on survival instead of fighting. The beauty of Chen's approach was that it looked like random system failures rather than coordinated sabotage. The Zenthai tech crews would spend hours trying to fix problems that were actually deliberate attacks, buying precious time for the human forces to achieve their objectives. Commander Velthok received the first emergency reports while he was celebrating the successful execution in his private quarters. He had been drinking Zenthai battle wine and reviewing footage of the human terrorist's death when his aide burst through the door. "Commander, we have multiple emergency situations across the sector. New Brasilia is under attack. The fleet around Kepler Prime is experiencing massive technical failures. Titan 7 has gone completely dark." Velthok set down his drink and activated his command console. The holographic display showed the true scope of the disaster. Red alert indicators were flashing on every world under his command. This was not random. This was coordinated. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "We destroyed their military 3 years ago. We control all their communication networks. They have no weapons, no leadership, no ability to coordinate attacks like this." His aide had no answer. Neither did anyone else in Zenthai command. On Titan 7, Master Chief Rodriguez was methodically working his way through the alien headquarters. The small charges he had placed during his cleaning rounds were creating chaos throughout the building. Emergency systems failed just when they were needed most. Security doors locked, trapping Zenthai soldiers in sections of the building that were filling with smoke. Rodriguez moved through service corridors that he had mapped months ago, staying ahead of the confused and panicked security teams. He reached the main command center and found it empty, except for 2 technicians who were frantically trying to re-establish communications with their fleet. "Excuse me," Rodriguez said politely in accented Zenthai. "I need to clean this room." The technicians looked up, confused. One of them was about to order him to leave when Rodriguez revealed the pistol he had been carrying in his maintenance kit. Both aliens went down without making a sound. Rodriguez walked to the main communication console and plugged in a device that Chen Liu had built for him months ago. Within seconds, he had complete access to the Zentai command network. He began downloading everything: personnel files, fleet movements, strategic plans, defensive positions, information that would help human forces plan their next moves. But more importantly, he uploaded a virus that would spread through the entire Zentai network over the next few days. Every system it touched would become unreliable. Communications would fail at critical moments. Supply orders would be corrupted. Troop movements would be misdirected. Similar operations were happening simultaneously across 17 worlds. The Zentai were discovering that their human workers had not been the defeated civilians they appeared to be. Maintenance staff turned out to be demolition experts. Medical personnel were actually combat medics who knew exactly how to disable alien physiology. Even the janitors seemed to have detailed knowledge of military tactics and classified security procedures. The scope of the deception was staggering. For 3 years, hundreds of highly trained human special forces personnel had been living under deep cover, gathering intelligence, placing equipment, and preparing for exactly this moment. They had jobs, families, and normal lives, but underneath they had always been soldiers waiting for orders. On the Zentai homeworld of Centauri Prime, High Command was beginning to understand the magnitude of the problem. Emergency reports were flooding in from across their territory. Not just attacks, but evidence of long-term infiltration and sabotage that went back years. "How many of them are there?" demanded Supreme Commander Thakvar, the military leader of the entire Zentai Empire. "We don't know, sir," replied his intelligence chief. "We're finding evidence of human operatives in positions we thought were secure. The maintenance worker on Titan 7 has disappeared with classified data. The electronics repair shop on Kepler Prime was apparently a front for cyber warfare operations. Even some of our medical staff appear to have been working for human intelligence." Thakvar studied the reports with growing alarm. This was not a spontaneous uprising. This was a carefully planned military operation that had been years in the making. The humans had been playing a completely different game while the Zentai thought they were in control. "Send reinforcements to all affected systems," he ordered. "Triple security at all installations, and find out how they've been communicating with each other without us detecting it." But it was already too late for reinforcements. Human teams had captured or destroyed the spaceports on most of the affected worlds. The orbital defense platforms that should have protected Zentai positions were offline or under human control. Ships trying to respond to the crisis were experiencing technical failures that left them dead in space. The Zentai had built their empire on superior technology and overwhelming force. They had never encountered an enemy that fought the way humans fought. They were used to facing other aliens who met them in direct battle, fleet against fleet, army against army. Humans did not fight that way. Humans infiltrated. Humans sabotaged. Humans turned the enemy's own infrastructure against them. Humans had been fighting guerrilla wars for thousands of years, and they had perfected the art of making the strong look weak and the weak look strong. Commander Velthok was beginning to understand this as he watched his carefully controlled sector fall apart around him. The human terrorist he had executed that morning was not the end of the resistance. She was the beginning of something much larger and much more dangerous. The execution that was supposed to break human spirit had instead triggered the largest coordinated military operation in the history of the galaxy, and the Zentai were not ready for it. Phase 1 was complete. Phase 2 was about to begin, and the humans were just getting started. Commander Velthok's hands shook as he read the latest reports. In 6 hours, he had lost control of 3 worlds, 2 orbital stations, and most of his communication network. What had started as isolated incidents was clearly a coordinated campaign designed to cripple Zentai power across the entire sector. "Sir, we're getting reports of human forces appearing out of nowhere," his tactical officer reported. "They seem to know our positions, our patrol routes, our security codes. It's like they've been studying us for years." Velthok slammed his fist on the command console. "That's exactly what they've been doing. We thought we were governing conquered populations. Actually, we were being watched and analyzed by military intelligence operatives." The truth was becoming clear, and it was worse than anyone had imagined. The humans had never been truly defeated. They had been playing a long game, allowing the Zentai to think they were in control while actually preparing for this moment. On New Brasilia, Jake Morrison's team had moved into Phase 2 of their operation. With communications down and orbital defenses offline, They were now hunting down individual Zenthai units and eliminating them with surgical precision. "Contact left, 200 meters," whispered Sarah Chen through her headset. She was positioned on a ridge overlooking a Zenthai patrol that was trying to reach the burning communication tower. "I see them," Jake replied. 6 soldiers, standard formation. "Torres, you're in position to flank them from the south. Park, can you get eyes on their escape route?" "Already there," Lisa Park confirmed. "They're boxed in. The patrol never knew what hit them. One moment they were moving through familiar territory. The next they were under attack from 3 directions by enemies, who seemed to know exactly where they would be and how they would react. This was the difference between Zenthai military doctrine and human special operations. The aliens relied on superior firepower and advanced technology. Humans relied on superior tactics and detailed intelligence. When humans had both advantages, the result was devastating. Similar ambushes were happening across the planet. Zenthai forces found themselves constantly under attack by enemies they could not see or predict. Every time they tried to regroup, human teams would appear from unexpected directions with perfect knowledge of alien capabilities and weaknesses. Dr. Torres had been particularly effective. His medical knowledge of Zenthai physiology allowed him to use non-lethal weapons that would incapacitate alien soldiers for hours. Sleeping gas, paralytic darts, and neural disruptors that he had built in his clinic over the past 2 years. The Zenthai never suspected that their trusted human doctor was actually a special forces medic who specialized in biological warfare. On Kepler Prime, Chen Lu's cyber warfare campaign had expanded beyond simple system failures. He was now actively manipulating Zenthai communications to spread false information and create confusion among their forces. "Attention all units. This is Fleet Command," Chen broadcast using stolen command codes. "Retreat to Sector 7 immediately. Human reinforcements have been detected approaching from the outer system." There were no human reinforcements. There was no threat in Sector 7. But the Zenthai units that received the message abandoned their positions and rushed to defend against an attack that did not exist, leaving critical installations unguarded. Chen followed up with contradictory orders that sent other units rushing back to positions they had just abandoned. Within hours, the entire Zenthai defense network was chasing shadows while human teams captured real objectives. The psychological impact was as important as the tactical advantage. Zenthai soldiers began to doubt their commanders, their equipment, and their information. They never knew if an order was real or if their instruments were giving them accurate data. Fear and confusion spread through their ranks like a virus. On Titan 7, Master Chief Rodriguez had become a ghost, haunting the Zenthai headquarters. He knew the building better than most of the aliens who worked there, and he used that knowledge to strike at key personnel and systems. Colonel Vexmore, the Zenthai base commander, had been found unconscious in his office with no memory of how he had gotten there. Major Kilthana, the intelligence chief, discovered that her secure files had been copied and her personal access codes had been changed. Captain Nexavul, the security chief, found explosive devices in his quarters that had been placed with such precision that they could have killed him at any time over the past 6 months. Rodriguez was sending a message. The Zenthai were not safe anywhere. Their most secure locations had been compromised. Their most trusted systems had been infiltrated. The human they had dismissed as a simple maintenance worker had been operating under their noses with complete freedom for 2 years. But Rodriguez was not just playing psychological games. He was gathering intelligence for the next phase of the operation. Using his access to Zenthai computer networks, he was downloading detailed information about fleet movements, supply routes, and defensive positions throughout the sector. This information was being transmitted to other human teams using communication methods the Zenthai could not detect or intercept. Hidden transmitters, coded messages embedded in seemingly normal broadcasts, and quantum entanglement devices that the aliens did not even know existed. The Zenthai were discovering that humans had been building a parallel communication network for years. While they thought they controlled all information flow in their territory, the humans had been passing intelligence and coordinating operations through channels that were completely invisible to alien monitoring systems. Supreme Commander Thakvar was beginning to understand the scope of the disaster as reports flooded in from across Zenthai space. This was not just a rebellion or an uprising. This was a professional military operation, conducted by highly trained Special Forces personnel using advanced intelligence and sophisticated planning. How many human operatives do we estimate are involved in this operation? He asked his staff. Sir, we're finding evidence of human infiltration at every level of our command structure. Conservative estimates suggest hundreds of deep cover agents across 17 worlds. Some of them have been in position for over 3 years. Takvar felt a chill run through his body. 3 years was how long the Zenthai had been occupying human territory. That meant the humans had been planning this operation since the day they surrendered. They never surrendered, he said quietly, the realization hitting him like a physical blow. They were buying time. They let us think we had won while they prepared for this. The implications were staggering. Every human the Zenthai had hired, every civilian they had trusted, every worker they had given access to their facilities. Any of them could be undercover military personnel. The conquered populations that seemed defeated and harmless might actually be armed and dangerous. Worse, the humans had turned the Zenthai's own infrastructure against them. The maintenance workers they relied on to keep their systems running were sabotaging those same systems. The doctors they trusted to treat their wounded were using medical knowledge to develop new ways to incapacitate alien soldiers. Even the translators and clerks had access to sensitive information that could be used for intelligence purposes. The Zenthai Empire had been infiltrated at every level by an enemy that was more patient, more clever, and more dangerous than they had ever imagined. Sir, what are your orders? Asked his aide. Takvar looked at the holographic display showing red alert indicators across 3 star systems. The humans had taken the initiative and seized the advantage. Traditional Zenthai military doctrine had no answer for this kind of asymmetric warfare. Prepare the fleet for immediate deployment, he ordered. Full mobilization. We're going to have to retake every position by force. But even as he gave the order, Takvar knew it might already be too late. The humans had spent 3 years learning everything about Zenthai capabilities and weaknesses. They would be ready for a conventional military response. The question was, what else had they been preparing for? Commander Velthok crouched behind the twisted wreckage of what had once been his command center, listening to the sounds of battle echoing through his flagship. The ship that had been the symbol of Zenthai power in this sector was now a maze of darkened corridors and malfunctioning systems. How many of them are there? He whispered to his aide, who was bleeding from a head wound. We don't know, sir. They seem to be everywhere and nowhere. They know our ship better than we do. Velthok's 4 hands clenched into fists. The humans had been aboard his ship for hours, moving through service tunnels and maintenance shafts that he had not even known existed. They struck without warning, disabled critical systems, and vanished before his security teams could respond. But the worst part was that he recognized some of them. The maintenance supervisor who had serviced his personal quarters for 2 years was actually a human military leader. The medical technician who had treated his crew was using that same medical knowledge to incapacitate his soldiers. Even the translator who had helped him prepare his victory speech was now hunting him through his own ship. The translator was a woman named Sarah Kim, and Velthok was beginning to understand that she was much more dangerous than she had appeared. For 18 months she had been present at every strategic meeting, every planning session, every briefing about military operations. She knew every secret, every weakness, every plan the Zenthai had made. Now she was using that knowledge to systematically dismantle his command structure from within. Commander Velthok, came a voice over his communicator. It was Kim, speaking in perfect Zenthai with the accent she had claimed to have learned from textbooks. I know you can hear me. We need to talk. Velthok activated his communicator but said nothing. You wanted to send a message when you executed Sergeant Santos. Kim continued. Consider your message received. Now we're sending one back. Every Zenthai commander who has committed war crimes against human civilians is going to answer for those crimes. Starting with you. Through the corridors of the ship, Velthok could hear his troops calling for backup that would never come. The humans had disabled the communication arrays and locked down the shuttle bays. No one was getting off this ship alive unless the humans allowed it. You cannot hope to defeat the entire Zenthai Empire. Velthok spoke into his communicator. Kill me, and 1,000 ships will come to avenge my death. Kim's laugh echoed through the ship's internal communication system. Commander, you still don't understand what's happening here. This isn't about defeating your empire in conventional warfare. This is about making it too expensive for you to continue occupying human worlds. As if to emphasize her point, explosions began echoing from the direction of the engine room. The ship's power fluctuated, and emergency lighting flickered on throughout the vessel. You see, we've been studying your people for 3 years, Kim continued. We know how you think. We know how you fight. Most importantly, we know how you make decisions about resource allocation and strategic priorities. More explosions. The gravity generators began to fail, causing sections of the ship to experience fluctuating artificial gravity. Right now, similar operations are taking place across 17 star systems. Your forces are discovering that every human world they thought they controlled is actually controlled by us. Every installation you thought was secure has been compromised. Every advantage you thought you had was an illusion we allowed you to believe. Velthok felt panic rising in his chest. If Kim was telling the truth, then the scope of this operation went far beyond anything he had imagined. The humans had not just been planning to retake their worlds, they had been planning to make continued occupation impossible. But here's the part you really need to understand. Kim's voice continued as she moved closer to his position. We didn't do this because we thought we could conquer your empire. We did this because we knew you would eventually do something stupid enough to justify what we're about to do to you. Velthok heard footsteps in the corridor outside his hiding place, multiple sets of boots moving with military precision. The humans were closing in and there was nowhere left to run. Executing Sergeant Santos on live broadcast was that stupid thing, Kim said as she appeared in the doorway, flanked by 3 other humans in military gear. You gave us the moral justification to stop playing nice. You gave us permission to show you what we're really capable of. Velthok reached for his sidearm, but Kim was faster. The weapon flew from his hand before he could draw it, and he found himself on the deck with a human boot on his chest. Let me explain what's going to happen next, Kim said, looking down at him with cold eyes. In approximately 6 hours, Earth's actual military response is going to arrive in this system. Not the resistance cells you've been fighting, not the deep cover operatives. The real Earth fleet. Velthok's aide tried to activate an emergency beacon, but one of the other humans disabled it with a single shot. You see, everything that's happened over the past 3 years, the occupation, the resistance, even this operation, it was all preparation for the real war, Kim continued. We needed to know everything about your capabilities, your tactics, your weaknesses. We needed to map your territory and identify your key personnel. Most importantly, we needed you to give us a reason that would justify what we're about to do. Through the ship's failing communication system, Velthok could hear reports from across Zenthai space. Fleet after fleet was reporting technical failures, surprise attacks, and loss of communication with planetary commands. The scope of the coordination was beyond anything the Zenthai had thought possible. How? Velthok managed to ask. How did you coordinate all of this without us detecting it? Kim smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Commander, we've been fighting wars longer than your species has had spaceflight. We know how to hide. We know how to wait. And we know how to hit back when the time is right. The ship shuddered as more explosions rocked the hull. Through the viewport, Velthok could see fires burning on the planet below where his forces were being systematically eliminated by enemies who seemed to anticipate their every move. The resistance you've been fighting for 3 years was never about retaking our worlds, Kim explained. It was about learning everything we needed to know to make this moment possible. Every patrol you sent out gave us information about your capabilities. Every response to our attacks taught us about your tactical doctrine. Every security measure you implemented showed us what you were afraid of. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. We turned your own occupation into a training exercise for our real military. You've been teaching us how to destroy you, and you never even knew it. On the planet below, Jake Morrison's team was wrapping up their final objectives. The Zenthai garrison had been neutralized, their equipment captured, and their personnel detained. But more importantly, every piece of intelligence they had gathered over 3 years was being compiled and transmitted to the incoming Earth fleet. Troop strengths, ship capabilities, defensive positions, supply routes, command structures. Everything the Earth military needed to plan a campaign that would drive the Zenthai out of human space permanently. All teams. This is Shepard, Jake spoke into his communicator. Phase 3 is complete. Package is ready for pickup. Similar reports were coming in from across 17 star systems. The deep cover teams had accomplished their mission. The Zenthai occupation force had been neutralized, and detailed intelligence about alien capabilities had been gathered and transmitted. Now, it was time for the professionals to take over, Vel. Thok saw the flash of ships dropping out of hyperspace through the viewport, not the small craft the Resistance had been using, but massive warships flying the colors of the United Earth Alliance. The real Earth fleet had arrived, armed with 3 years of detailed intelligence about Zenthai capabilities and weaknesses. "You wanted to know what happens when you kill one of ours?" Kim said, securing restraints around Velthok's wrists. "Now you're going to find out. The galaxy is about to learn why humans don't make good slaves." The war was entering its final phase. The Zenthai had thought they were fighting defeated civilians and desperate resistance fighters. They were about to discover they had been fighting the most dangerous military force in the galaxy, one that had been holding back for 3 years while preparing for this moment. The execution of Maria Santos had lasted 9 minutes. The fall of the Zenthai Empire was going to take considerably longer, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. Earth was done playing defense. Now it was time to play offense.